It was a lazy Sunday morning, the kind that whispers peace is still out there, somewhere, despite the world's chaos. The sun was soft, birds chattered in the bushes, and I was halfway through a cannonball into my pool, clutching a travel mug of Guatemalan coffee like a pro. My Bluetooth speaker crooned Jimmy Buffett, and the air swirled with chlorine and freshly mowed grass. For a fleeting moment, life was perfect. Then I saw a tiny red blinking light on a sleek black pole just above the hedge, hovering like a mechanical gnat, staring with intent. Right over my pool. I froze mid-paddle, squinting, my pulse sinking with that cursed blink. A camera. Someone had planted a camera over my backyard. No, over my pool. I stared until it sank in his wasn't some neighbor's half-baked DIY. It was mounted on a steel pole just beyond my fence, tall enough to peer into my private oasis. My coffee soured in my mouth. Still dripping, I stormed inside, wrapped a towel around my waist, and yanked open my laptop. A few clicks into the HOA's community app confirmed my suspicions. New surveillance measures approved, cameras installed at community corners for safety. I lived at the end of a cul-de-sac. No corners, no traffic, no safety threats, just me, my pool, and a suddenly tyrannical HOA. I knew who was behind this. Susan Harper, the HOA president who once slapped me with a fine for unauthorized porch planters. Her grudge was quiet but relentless, sparked when I skipped her son's overpriced artisanal soap fundraiser and dared to install a mailbox that didn't match the neighborhood palette. In her knitting circle, I was the villain. Towel clinging like a soggy cape, I marched to the HOA officia glorified shed by the pickleball courts and found Susan inside, sipping a kale smoothie through a bamboo straw, radiating smugness. She didn't look up. If this is about the camera, we've had 4 break-ins this year. I crossed my arms. 4? What? Tom's lost garden gnome, Lisa's runaway cat, and 2 kids TPNG the gazebo? Susan's smile was icy. Community safety is everyone's responsibility. That camera's aimed at my pool. She spun her laptop toward me. Our bylaws state public sightlines must remain clear for safety. Your pool falls within one. My pool's not public. Anything visible from a shared zone is community relevant. Rule 37C. In that moment, standing half-soaked in a shed being lectured on voyeurism dressed as safety, I realized Susan wasn't just irritating, she was dangerous. The kind of bureaucrat who wields vague rules like a cudgel and just enough power to make you question your sanity. I went home, dried off, but the fire in my chest didn't fade. I pulled up the HOA bylaws. Rule 37C was real but deliberately fuzzy. Public sightlines may not be obstructed from authorized board views to ensure neighborhood uniformity and safety. Uniformity? From a hidden camera spying on my pool. I dug deeper. 3 new cameras had been installed, all in public zones. 1 by the mailbox cluster fair. 1 at the street entrance. Okay. The 3rd? A tall, nosy pole behind Susan's backyard fence, perfectly positioned to capture my pool, my grill, and, if my blinds were open, my living room. I checked the camera's specs online. With its zoom and night vision, it could probably read the label on my sunscreen. I called a lawyer buddy, who said it was technically legal if the pole was on HOA land and didn't record audio or interiors. A privacy gray area, stamped with Susan's smug grin. I could have called the HOA board or filed a complaint, but I knew how that'd go. Another meeting, more fake smiles, and a dead-end email promising to look into it. No, this demanded something bolder, not a grievance, but a spectacle. I leaned back, fingers laced like a B-movie mastermind, and hatched a plan. I couldn't remove the camera or block it permanently, but if Susan wanted to play sightline games, I'd outplay her with color, vinyl, and sheer audacity. I phoned my cousin Nate, a product designer who builds oddities like glowing parade floats and oversized mascot costumes. What's the biggest, most ridiculous thing I can inflate in my backyard without a permit? Nate cackled. You want to block a camera with an inflatable? No, I want to block an HOA with the inflatable. He paused. I'm in. That night, I sketched designs on a takeout napkin, compiled a materials list, and scouted inflatable vinyl suppliers. The solution would be absurd, glorious, and crucially within the rules, as long as it was temporary, event-specific decor. Picturing Susan's face as a massive jungle-themed inflatable wall rose between her camera and my pool, I felt something new. Control. If the HOA wanted war, I was done playing nice. The next morning, my backyard looked like a pool float factory explosion. Rolls of heavy-duty PVC were stacked by the patio, and Nate rolled up at dawn in cargo pants, a Monster Energy cap, and a grin screaming chaos. The plan: a 10-foot tall, 25-foot wide inflatable wall, one side plastered with a garish jungle scene, the other reflective vinyl. The camera would see nothing but cartoon parrots and vines. It'd be loud, absurd, and legal. I'd already filed for a temporary event privacy installation permit under the HOA's own rules, which allowed structures for backyard parties if they weren't permanent, didn't block roads, and weren't flammable. It sailed through approval. Susan probably thought I was erecting a boring tent. Inflation Day kicked off with a roar as Nate's industrial air pump brought the first panel to life. The jungle print unfurled like a rebel flag. My dog, Buddy, barked at it like it was a tropical beast rising from the deep. By mid-morning, the support columns stood tall, anchored by sandbags and tied to stakes in my yard. It was a plastic fortress of petty revenge. By noon, the wall was fully inflated, a towering barrier of artificial wilderness blocking the camera's view entirely. From my yard, it was parrots and waterfalls. From outside, pure obstruction. I snapped a photo, slapped on a filter, and posted it to the neighborhood chat. Privacy's a jungle. 3 minutes later, Susan appeared, storming around the corner, leash taut as her yappy terrier skittered behind like an angry purse. "What is that?" I grinned from my poolside chair, sipping a mango smoothie. "Decor for a private pool party. Approved, permitted. Don't worry, I filed the form." She marched to her property line, eyes narrowing. "It's obstructing the view." "Of what?" "My flip-flops." I pointed to the laminated permit tacked to a fence post, signed and dated by her own assistant during last week's HOA hours. Susan stared, jaw clenching like a vice. "This is retaliation." "Nope," I said, loud enough for the camera to catch. "This is a jungle-themed wall for personal enjoyment, per Section 11 temporary event structures, valid for 14 days. Her lips twitched, but no words came, just a stunned huff as she spun and stomped off. I waved, tossing Buddy a treat. That evening, the first email hit. "You are in violation of community cohesion." Signed, Susan. It claimed inflatables over 5 feet. Editor's note. The saga of an inflatable wall versus an overzealous HOA president continues, with petty vengeance, legal loopholes, and a neighborhood rebellion. 5 feet required full board approval for aesthetic disruption. Nice try. I replied with a screenshot of the temporary structure clause and a parrot emoji. The next morning, a hand-delivered letter appeared in my mailbox. No stamp. No HOA envelope, just a note threatening fines for disrupting property airflow. I laughed so hard I nearly fell into the pool. Nate, choking on his breakfast taco, said Susan was flailing, inventing rules to bury me. She'd underestimated me. I'd always paid her fines and kept quiet, but this was personal. That night, Nate helped me add LED strips to the wall's top edge, casting a festive glow. Hidden speakers played jungle sounds and monkey calls. The camera now faced a twinkling tropical resort. By day 3, the wall was a spectacle. Kids pointed, neighbors snapped photos, and one said, "I'm thinking of putting one by my deck." Susan's newsletter railed against preserving community standards, but the tide was turning. On day 4, a man in khakis with a clipboard arrived from the HOA compliance team. "I'm here to assess the wall," he said, blinking at the swaying parrots. I handed him coffee and the permit. He read it, scratched his head, and said, "It's obnoxious but compliant." I grinned. "That's the point." He chuckled. "You're starting a trend." 3 people asked about temporary walls this week. After he left, I realized Susan's plan to shame me had backfired. She'd sparked a privacy revolt. People were fed up with her fines and control. The wall wasn't just a barrier, it was a symbol. 2 days later, my mailbox overflowed with 8 HOA citations, all from Susan. Excessive pool ripples, noise pollution, reflective material misuse. Absurd. I spread them on my table, torn between laughter and rage. All dated the same day. Dan confirmed my compliance. Retaliation, plain and simple. I scanned them, posted them to the HOA forum, and wrote, "Got 8 violations today." Anyone else getting HOA love notes? Responses flooded in. Rachel shared a citation for her bird baths, water hazard. Mike got fined for his patio umbrellas, improper tilt. Susan was unhinged, and I'd lit the fuse. My Ring camera caught her at 5:17 p.m., slipping the citations into my mailbox of federal offense. I sent the clip to my lawyer friend. The next morning, a stranger with a telephoto lens photographed my yard. When I confronted him, he mumbled about board documentation and fled. That afternoon, a new citation appeared on my porch, unruly ambience. Susan was building a paper avalanche to drown me. I struck back, filing a city privacy complaint with photos of the camera, the citations, the mailbox video, and a timeline. The city clerk's eyebrows hit his hairline. "Talk to code enforcement," he said. 3 days later, a city inspector, Greg, arrived. I gave him iced tea and a tour. He measured the wall, checked the camera's angle, and laughed at the pool ripples citation. "You're not the first," he said. "We've had 4 complaints about this HOA president this month. She's overreaching." Meanwhile, the wall became a local legend. A blog called it Backyard Jungle vs. HOA Tyranny. Kids waved as cars slowed. Someone left a crate of plastic parrots on my doorstep with a note: "Keep fighting." Susan doubled down, scheduling an emergency HOA meeting, resident obstruction case. I arrived in a Hawaiian shirt, armed with a binder of bylaws, permits, and video files. Susan ranted about visual harmony and my wall's emotional divisiveness. I waited, then stood. "This wall is temporary, approved, and harmless," I said. "But your camera, installed without notice, spying on my pool? That's a privacy violation." The fake citations? Retaliation. The mailbox tampering? Federal. I passed out copies of my city complaint and the mailbox footage. The room went quiet. A board member, Carl, whispered to another, then spoke. "Susan, did you deliver those citations yourself?" Her jaw tightened. "Someone had to ensure he got them." "That's not your job," Carl said. Susan stammered. "You're missing the issue control, neighborhood integrity." "Maybe we want less integrity and more parrots," I said. The room erupted in laughter. Susan grabbed her binder and stormed out. That night, a board member, Tara, emailed me. Several residents wanted a vote to replace the HOA leadership. The wall had exposed a rotten system. By day 10, the wall was a statement. Motion-activated lights flashed messages like, "Wave, Susan." Speakers played jungle drums. Neighbors left notes. Susan's had it coming. Others stayed quiet, wary. Susan's allies for homeowners glared and whispered. It wasn't about privacy anymore. It was a power struggle. On day 11, a sign appeared at the community entrance. All yard modifications must be pre-approved. Excessive decor may result in fines. I posted it online. Blink twice if Susan's holding your taste hostage. Comments exploded. One read, "If Susan hates fun, someone get her a coloring book and a shrink." The pressure was breaking her. The next HOA meeting was public, with a vague agenda. Policy updates and special motions. The air buzzed. People brought cameras and snacks. Susan unveiled a PowerPoint, blasting my wall with blurry photos and a clip of a swaying parrot labeled "Wind Hazard." She warned of lawsuits, liability, and moral decay. Proposing a rule: all structures over 6 feet needed board review and could be removed at any board member's whim. Murmurs grew. Someone muttered, "Ridiculous." Susan revealed a letter from a safety consultant claiming the wall blocked emergency visibility. I stood. This isn't about safety or aesthetics. It's control. You want to ban a legal structure because it blocks your unauthorized camera spying on my pool. You've issued fake citations to silence me. That's harassment. Applause broke out. Susan tried to interrupt, but I pressed on. "This wall's a mirror, showing what you've done for years." Carl raised his hand. "Can we table this absurd policy?" Tara seconded. The vote crushed it. Susan's face paled, her binder trembling. She'd lost. But she wasn't done. That night, a courier delivered a restraining order request, claiming I'd harassed her, caused emotional distress, and created a threatening environment with the wall. I forwarded it to my lawyer, stunned but impressed by her desperation. A week later, we faced off in court. Susan, dressed like a soap opera widow, spun a tale of the wall ruining her mornings and stressing her dog. I presented the timeline, citations, mailbox video, city approval, and community support. The judge dismissed her request. There's no basis here, and this seems retaliatory. Susan left without a glance. Back home, a note was taped to my door. Thank you for standing up when we couldn't. The wall wasn't just mine, Anna Maria, it was a symbol. A week later, the neighborhood felt lighter. People waved, chatted openly. The HOA board lost its edge, now covered in flyers for a parrot party and a petition for fewer rules. The camera over my pool vanished overnight, likely removed in shame. Then came the mutiny. Tara texted, asking about strategy. The board was plotting without Susan. Carl proposed dissolving the leadership after too many scandals. The vote passed quietly in a community center. Susan's resignation hit the HOA Faruma melodramatic screed blaming the wall, the court, and carnival-like inflatables. She was gone. Tara became president, launching a survey to gut bad rules and inviting everyone to my backyard for a great unwind pool bash. Party day, I eyed the wall. It was less protest, more monument, still absurd, still loved. I considered deflating it, but as neighbors arrived with chairs and coolers, I knew it wasn't just mine. By noon, the yard was packed. Kids splashed. Rachel brought parrot cupcakes. Carl blasted classic rock. Mike handed out koozies. Free the yard. Laughter filled the air. Real connection replacing years of tension. Tara grabbed the mic. To Ryan, for showing us neighbors aren't prisoners. Cheers erupted. Buddy barked like he'd won an Oscar. Then a woman in sunglasses approached Claire from city zoning oversight. She'd followed the camera complaint and came to observe. You filed the privacy issue? She asked. I nodded. Didn't expect to host a festival. She smiled. This is nonviolent resistance done right. That wall's absurd and genius. She stayed, chatted, and promised new camera placement rules to curb HOA overreach. It wasn't just victory, it was reform. As the sun set, casting shadows of inflatable parrots, I watched neighbors dance, toast freedom, and share stories like old friends. The neighborhood had reset, free of control, free of Susan. Next morning, I deflated the wall not because I had to, but because its work was done. I left one parrot staked by the mailbox, a sign around its neck, Susan Free Zone. The pool was open again, not just to water, but to life, laughter, and a community finally itself. All thanks to one ridiculous wall, a blinking camera, and a guy who said, enough.